You know, our modern world runs on all these incredibly complex systems that we just take for granted. But what if the biggest threat isn't that they might just fail, but that someone could break them on purpose? In this explainer, we're diving into a new era of risk, one where the line between an accident and an attack is getting dangerously blurry.
So let's look back at 2022. It was like a drumbeat of warnings, one after another. First, a major land war kicks off in Europe. Then, over the summer, these mysterious drones start showing up over critical energy rigs in the North Sea. And then, boom, the final act. Underwater explosions rip through the Nord Stream pipelines. All of a sudden, a threat that seemed abstract became very, very real.
Yeah, those explosions? This wasn't some technical glitch or a random accident. This was a message. It was a crystal clear example of what some are calling the weaponization of energy, basically turning the very infrastructure that powers our lives into a tool of conflict.
Make no mistake, this was not an accident. The way it was done, where it was done, it was all designed to send a warning. It was like someone was drawing a giant red arrow pointing to Europe's biggest vulnerability, showing that even the networks hidden deep under the sea are not safe.
Okay, so to really get what's changed, we have to pull apart two words that we often use like they mean the same thing: safety and security. But it turns out they represent two completely different ways of thinking, almost two different cultures. And that gap between them, well, that's where our biggest vulnerability lies now.
Let's break it down. On one side, you have safety. This is all about preventing accidents, right? Things like a part failing, a system malfunctioning, or just plain old human error. Then you have security, and that's a totally different beast. It's about defending against a thinking, breathing adversary, someone who intends to cause harm. The whole field of safety science basically grew up around really hazardous industries, oil rigs, chemical plants. It's all about engineering and process management, designing systems so they don't break down on their own. Security, on the other hand, deals with intentional harm. It starts with the assumption that there's someone out there with a motive, a criminal, a terrorist group, maybe even another country. The focus isn't just on what can go wrong, but on who might make it go wrong. And this divide, it goes way, way deeper than just a couple of definitions. These two worlds literally don't speak the same language. Safety experts look at risk using hard data and probabilities. Security experts rely on intelligence, trying to figure out what the bad guys are thinking. And their whole culture is different. Safety is all about openness, sharing information to prevent the next accident. But security often depends on secrecy to stop an attack before it happens.
Which brings us right to our case study, the Norwegian petroleum industry. This industry is like the world champion of safety. They've poured decades and fortunes into mastering the art of preventing accidents. But in 2022, they got hit with a problem their safety manuals had zero answers for: a deliberate, massive security threat.
This chart really lays it all out perfectly. Look at the event in the middle: damage to the pipeline. Now, the cause on the left could be a safety failure or a security attack. But here's the kicker. Look at the consequences on the right: a supply disruption, political unrest, environmental damage. They're exactly the same. The final impact doesn't care one bit whether it was an accident or an attack. And this just raises a huge question. Who is actually responsible for stopping this? The lines are a total blur. You have private companies that own the pipes, but then you have the national government that's supposed to handle defense. And when that infrastructure is critical for a whole continent, suddenly international groups like NATO are at the table. It's a tangled, confusing web of who's in charge. So, if the old way of keeping things in separate boxes is broken, what's the fix? Well, the research points to a completely new playbook, what they call a holistic way to manage risk, one that's actually built for the interconnected world we live in. What does holistic actually mean here? It means zooming out. Instead of just looking at the pipeline with a microscope, you're looking at it with a satellite, seeing the entire geopolitical map around it. It means finally recognizing that safety and security aren't separate things but two sides of the very same coin. And most importantly, it means treating both with equal weight. So what does this actually look like in the real world? It means breaking down walls. It means the safety engineers who worry about rust on a pipeline are sitting in the same room as the intelligence analysts who are tracking threats in the region. It means government agencies are actually coordinating, and companies, navies, and international partners are all sharing information and planning a response together. It's about treating a geopolitical threat as seriously as an engineering flaw. As the researchers put it themselves, the goal isn't to pretend safety and security are the same thing. They're not. The real challenge and the real danger is governing what happens at their complex intersection, because that intersection is where our biggest vulnerabilities are now.
Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, this is an interesting problem for oil companies, but what does it have to do with me? Well, the lessons we're learning from the deep waters of the North Sea actually apply to all the invisible networks that our daily lives depend on.
So is this really just about oil and gas pipelines? Absolutely not. That was just the canary in the coal mine.
This exact same logic of connected risk applies everywhere, to our electricity grids, to the undersea cables that carry all our internet traffic, to the financial networks that move our money, and even the supply chains that put food on our tables. All of these systems were designed for safety and efficiency, but not necessarily for security.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty sobering question. In a world this interconnected, where one malicious actor can target any weak link in the chain, have we reached the point where something can't really be called safe at all if it isn't also secure? That's a question we can't afford to ignore anymore.